Hey guys, welcome to the Jury Duty Podcast. We are your hosts. I am Lindsay, and over across the internet is my delightful co-host Kimberly.
Delightful.
She is you are the faith to my Tim.
Oh, I try.
Yeah,
I'll be Tim if you want to be Faith. I totally get it.
I love both of them.
I'm not a big country fan, but I do like them. So
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is, if you're not a country fan, you typically know country singers.
yeah, well, I'm a music person. I'm more I recognize more than I actually partake.
Yeah.
My husband was just excited the other day that I correctly identified Jelly Roll on the radio.
Yeah. Jelly Roll. Yeah. And
they all sound alike to me.
Yeah, it's kind of the same message across the board, the music.
Pretty much.
Anyway, well, welcome all of our new subscribers. You have probably come here from STS, Surviving the Survivor. Yes. One of our podcast besties, Joel, had us on quite a bit last week, which we are so delighted to have spoken to him. I mean, about Gabby Petito and Mamta.
It was a double-decker week for us, but we're really grateful. Yeah, especially that we got to talk about Mamta, because that's really what we wanted to do.
Yeah, and connect him to Gabby's family. It was just a really great week, and so we're so grateful that we were able to go on the podcast with him, talk to him about the stories that are close to our heart, and we're so glad that you guys are here and you want to learn more about Mamta's story and also whatever craziness comes into the true crime world, I guess, huh?
Yeah, hopefully you'll stick around. We don't really have a format, so it changes, but that's the point. We just want to have a seat at the table as the everyday possible juror. So we talk about things that are interesting to us and things that no one's asking us questions about on other, like news channels and big shows. Like, that's what we're here for. So if there's anything you do want to talk about or something you want us to invite you to come talk about, please just let us know. And if you're not totally in love or jazzed with what we're already doing, feel free to make a suggestion, but we're just glad you're here.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. There is such a thing as constructive criticism.
There is.
I can take it.
To it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I can take it. Don't be a jerk. That's the only rule.
Man, did I say totes my goats? Good God.
Totes
the only rule, don't be a troll.
Don't be a troll.
Don't be a troll, because I'll tell you what, I am not the one. But also, I like learning new things. So if you disagree, feel free to educate me.
Mm-hmm. Feel free.
Feel free.
So you probably clicked on this video because we are going to kind of bring you up to the present time. We are in February 2025 of where Mamta's story is today.
Yeah. Sorry. I can't believe it's February 2025.
You
said that and the question marks and the Tweety bird started
It's that meme that's got all of the math equations that go across the guy's
I'm mathing, and that's not my strong subject either, so it's painful.
Mamta, her husband has been taken into custody, charged with murder.
Yes, finally.
Concealment of a dead body.
And defiling a dead body.
Yes. So he's been detained. He's in jail. So what now?
Well, since these charges were added, we've got some additional evidence to explore. We get a clearer picture now of what the state's case may be. We had a clear picture of what the defense was going to do before the murder charges, but now that doesn't really hold a lot of water. We can talk more about that part in another episode, but we really want to cover what we've learned from the DNA analyses that led to the change in the charges. So bear with us. Plenty of information, and I'm going to roll through it quickly because I know that's what you came for. You don't care about whether or not I listen to Jelly Roll, but if you do care, I'm sorry that I don't listen to Jelly Roll.
Well, okay, so just to talk about DNA really quick, just to be clear. So when Naresh was first detained, they took a DNA sample, and it was identified as a human DNA hit.
Yeah, initially they found a great amount of varying types of blood evidence in the house.
Right.
And they took carpet samples. They took non-blood evidence as well. I will get into that momentarily, but they did determine at the very least an onset that the blood and the DNA evidence in the house as of August was human blood, but they did not know whose blood until the DNA results came back.
And that was right before his trial is when they literally like the Friday
could
before
not be
the Monday.
More the 11th hour if it wanted to be.
Or the 13th if you live in Indiana.
No, was that Pike County or Indiana?
One
of those two cities, there's a judge that doesn't know that the 13th hour is not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Moving right
It's
along.
okay. That's right.
It's okay. In any case, they needed to have this DNA to charge him with murder. And just quick, I'm not going to get in the rabbit hole. We'll do that later. Without the murder charge, had they been able to proceed to trial without these charges, they would never have been able to charge him with murder in the future. So this last minute save with these DNA certificates coming back and being seen by the court could not have made a bigger difference at this crucial point in this investigation. So that's a near miss that I hope we don't have any more of, because we also had a near miss when he tried to flee to Nepal and they caught him just in time. So hopefully now this will be smooth sailing. His trial starts September 8th. And you want to jump into some of the new evidence we can expect?
Let's do it.
First up, potential witness testimony and evidence. So we have some hints about how the Commonwealth is going to tackle Naresh's character, conflicting statements, his demeanor during the investigation before he was incarcerated. Not a surprising strategy, but
typical.
Now we know how they intend, at least in part, to make that part of their case with evidence. So 2 types of evidence were entered for the record on December 13th. The first 3 motions were subpoenas for journalists, for whom Naresh granted public interviews during. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because that's the dumbest thing you could do. If most defendants don't even take the stand in their own defense, they sure as hell are not out flapping about to all the reporters.
Oh, he loves to talk, especially to police officers, right?
Yeah, right. But these are all listed as non-resident witness subpoenas for WUSA 9's Katie Lusso, Rafael Sanchez Cruz, who's also with WUSA 9, and Sachi Mainali, who, if you've watched any of our coverage of this already, you know that she's interviewed everybody under the sun. Naresh, their mutual friends, Mamta's family. Yeah. So these have been featured before. If you haven't watched them, please check them out. I will pop up some stuff and I will link things in the description. Yeah. She did a hell of a job. These interviews are long. Yeah. So definitely go watch those if you've got some time, but you definitely want the subtitles. The interesting thing about this evidence is that the purpose of these motions was primarily to enter them as business records. So I will talk about what a business record is. I'm sure they will all have to testify in some way, shape, or form, whether that's by affidavit or in court, as to the validity of these records. But how much testimony they have to give depends on whether the judge rules in favor of the Commonwealth or the defense, who has entered an objection to these records. So judges have a lot of latitude when it comes to the inclusion or exclusion of evidence, which could be subjective. But let me explain to you what business records are. Business records are allowable as evidence, and broadly speaking, they should meet certain criteria. The first is that they should be made during the normal course of business, which we can say these were interviews by journalists, pretty cut and dry. They must be written or made by someone with firsthand knowledge of the event. These were direct interviews. They didn't go through third parties, pretty cut and dry. They cannot be irreputable. So major news organizations like WUSA 9 fit that bill as a reputable source. So if you've ever done homework in the digital age, if your teacher, professor, whoever ever said, don't use Wikipedia, it's not a real source, that's what this means. Don't use the Wikipedia. I don't know if Sachi has any media credentials. That may be what the defense objected to. We don't know. I'm not entirely sure. That may be the only snag there. I'm not entirely clear on that yet.
She's tied to a news organization in Nepal, but I don't know. They may be objecting because their standards may be different than American media.
I think they also might be objecting because they don't want a jury to watch these interviews. They don't. So they don't. It is him, first person, in his own words, spewing nothing but nonsensical lies. I wouldn't want a jury to watch that either. The lesser of two evils would be a judge says, fine, you can't put these in, and the defense wins. It's still sort of a win for the Commonwealth because that means they can still subpoena these people to come and testify about these interviews.
Right.
Where they cross the line with hearsay, I'm not entirely sure. We can probably ask our good friend Josh Ritter if he'll come back and chat with us.
Josh, can you come back?
Josh, if you're watching.
Or Vinny.
Please. Vinny.
Anybody.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on TV and sometimes in the shower when I'm rehashing arguments I've had 6 months ago because I've suddenly remembered them.
I think we all do that, though.
Yeah, shower thoughts. In any case. So either way, these people are still probably going to make an appearance at this trial. It just depends how much. Finally, the person submitting them has to lay foundation for admissibility. So the Commonwealth has to explain why these are considered business records and why they're relevant to their case. They can't just be extra fluff they want to throw in. These were damning and contradictory interviews and statements that he made to the police and to others. It demonstrates lack of credibility, and he knew they'd be publicized. So I'd say they're fair play. That's just my opinion. But a final summary of this is that the subpoena can't be broad. Same thing with journalistic privilege, fishing expeditions with no real targeted information. You can't just say, give me all your interviews from June. Why? Give me your interviews from June with tall purple people eaters with red hair because we're on the lookout for one. That's a different story. But you can't be unduly burdensome to a journalist as a way to overcome their privilege. But there's something else here is what's crucial about what is not in those interviews. If you know anything about the Karen Reed case, she gave a bunch of formal sit-down interviews, maybe not a bunch, I might be exaggerating. That lately has blown up on her a little bit. If you don't know,
she did like 3.
Yeah. If you don't know what I'm referring to, either Lawyer Lee or Lawyer I think covered this a little bit because Massachusetts wanted to see the off-the-record comments taken by interviewers that would otherwise be protected by journalistic privilege. So in her criminal retrial, they want to be able to see, well, what didn't make it in? But Massachusetts has some fun loopholes that could make that possible. And so does Virginia. So Virginia does not have shield laws. This could work for or against, or be a wash, more likely a win for the Commonwealth, because one way or another, they're getting these witness testimonies in, whether it's with these interviews or with these actual reporters. Much like the name suggests, shield laws protect reporters from being legally compelled to disclose confidential sources, information, or to surrender unpublished material. So this is the First Amendment on steroids. This is why you hear the phrase off the record so much, because that information is basically like talking to a priest. Can't be repeated, published, etc. There are exceptions and ways to get, maneuver around this, though. And in Virginia, given that there's no shield laws, makes it a little interesting, but fear not. Our courts do acknowledge a reporter's privilege as sort of a given by the First Amendment of the Constitution. So it's kind of like the honor system. Basically, they can rely on that right, and courts here tend to respect it. It's kind of the silent, yeah, we know. In order to get around it, there are some fancy footwork steps you can do. It's called the balance test. At least I'm calling it the balance test. 3-point approach. Proof that this record is relevant and it cannot be obtained by any other means without this piece of evidence, and that there's a really compelling interest in the information that goes to either something exculpatory or something super condemning for your case. It's broad. We're going to keep it high level. But as of 2020, only one case in the Supreme Court of Virginia existed pertaining to the issue of overriding this invisible privilege. So Virginia courts tend to be super faithful to the precedents that come before it at the federal level and in most other states, which means we respect the First Amendment. We're not going to tell reporters they can't have it. So let's cross our fingers it stays that way, and we don't see this as the second case out of however many thousands. But I'll leave you with this. This was the precedent case law. This was the decision. It's United States versus Sterling. It's from 2013, Fourth Circuit, Virginia. Quote, "There is no First Amendment testimonial privilege, absolute or qualified, that protects a reporter from being compelled to testify by prosecution or defenses in criminal proceedings about criminal conduct that the reporter personally witnessed or participated in, absent a showing of bad faith, harassment, or other non-such legitimate motive, even though the reporter promised confidentiality to the source." What this means is we respect the First Amendment, but we do make a differentiation between what absolute privilege is and what qualified privilege is. Absolute is just what it sounds like. First Amendment, woo-woo, all the jazz. Qualified privilege has some limits. So this means reporters can still be called to testify about their observations of the subject without compromising source material, confidential information. I can't say that word today. They can still be compelled to testify about I have to leave that in because you wouldn't believe how have been today. No. They can still be compelled to testify about their experiences and observations while interviewing or in someone's presence. But the lesser of two evils is a judge rejects the business records and the state just calls these people as witnesses. Weaker, but still a win. Far less stress to the defense, who can say their observations are not facts. Videos are. So that gives them a tiny bit of wiggle room to be like, well, this is why we want to talk about hearsay with a lawyer, because this could be interesting. But,
Yeah. Well, so I want to ask our viewers, if you've seen all of our Mamta content, is that enough if you're on a jury to convict him? Just from what we've given you, which is like public information.
Right.
All the things.
Right.
We don't know his defense. We don't know his side of the story yet. Could you guys say he's guilty at this point without knowing what the defense is?
Right. Or not guilty. Now, remember, our opinions of him, of him don't count. We're just talking about the information that we've researched, have gotten from court hearings, records, investigative documents. Those things, we didn't just create those out of, we didn't create those out of thin air. We definitely got them through a lot of research. So forget our opinions. What we do know, what do you think so far? Because we haven't talked about the blood yet. Maybe we should talk about that.
Let's do it.
But to wrap up, this whole ridiculously long legalese definition of absolute privilege, I'm a word nerd and I got at least one degree in English, and journalism was a heavy bit of that. So it's kind of where I geek out. In any case, since the courts in Virginia tend to quash any revocation of this unstated idea of privilege, this can be another way to enter at least part of this evidence from the Commonwealth. And we will see how this plays out, hopefully sooner than later. I'll check and see if there's any other objections. But I know what you all want to get into, and it's the second bit of this evidence, and that is the DNA. So let me start here. Here's what we know. December the 10th, the certificates, so there were 4 certificates of analysis for 4 DNA reports. They were submitted to the court, as well as their intention to present at a trial. So in Virginia, it is required no less than 21 days from trial that if you're going to submit DNA, you need to give the opposite side time to object, and they have to do that no less than 10 days. So we're well ahead of that, but it's not common for DNA to be excluded. Now, this also depends on the type of DNA, touch DNA, saliva, blood, hair follicles. It really depends, the weaker of that being like touch DNA, but I don't know very many cases where it's just flat out been excluded. The Legal Code of Virginia acknowledges DNA collection and testing methodologies and science as broadly reliable technique, and a judge would really have to use their way deep down in their discretion to go, not today, Satan, we're not going to do DNA. So unlikely, and I don't think there's any defense objections that have been entered to it because it's probably kind of a losing battle. So we can expect to see this.
Yeah, I know in the, was it Lori Vallow's trial, they had the state had a DNA expert, and then she brought her own DNA expert. Was that? No, she didn't even have a defense.
Yeah, I was going to say Lori didn't really. That could change here soon, but maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. It
was Chad.
I was about to say we can ask Adam. Adam's gonna be like, I don't know.
Adam doesn't know.
Sorry, Adam.
Sorry.
we know you don't know. Trash. We're saving you a phone call right now.
Yeah. No, it was Chad's defense because they had that long-haired, bearded.
Oh yeah. It was Chad's trial.
Yeah. So anyway, going back to the point.
All right.
Sometimes defense can bring in their own DNA expert to show that this is unreliable, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If you watch the Casey Anthony trial, Arpad Voss and his canister of air, Anyway, I'm moving along. So these 4 certificates came from the Virginia Department of Forensic Science. They are dated from between August 28th and November 12th. So at 4 separate times during that period, they collected evidence and had it tested. They outlined the results of the DNA evidence, and there were a lot of items, most of which were from inside the Bhatt home. For the sake of being simple, I'll also pop this up on the screen because I know I'm actually blowing through this right now. I will tell you what these items include. Mamta's hairbrush, a carpet sample. So if you watch the news, you remember seeing them taking all these rolled up carpets out. A bloody trash can, a bath mat, which I'm going to assume is the one that he tossed in that clothing donation bin at the gas station. At least 4 knives, some being excluded, but we know that he bought 3 during his very strange range of activities before that body cam video. 3 stained swabs, but it doesn't say what type of objects they are. They also retrieved buccal swabs, so the cheek swabs, from Baby, Naresh, Geeta, who's Mamta's mother, and Mahesh, who is her brother. Mm-hmm. And then finally, a reciprocating saw. We'll get there. I know you're excited. Hold on. We're going to get there.
We've heard that tool a couple of times in a few different cases.
Yeah. They used Mamta's hairbrush and DNA from Baby and her relatives to develop a DNA profile for her to compare to others, so they can exclude or include her for all of the items they tested. The profile from her hairbrush was, quote, indicative of a female contributor, and the major profile was built from that and compared to all these other items. They got a solid DNA profile. That's what it comes down to. So now they can compare it to all the blood and DNA on these items. From the look of the report, some of them returned less conclusive results than others. Some had identifiable profiles that were inconsistent or mixed, which makes sense if you think about what we would call communal items, high traffic things multiple people would touch, like carpet or glassware in a kitchen, So it's possible that some of these items have been exposed to all or some of multiple people's DNA. They did not have complete profiles for all of these items yet, but they had strong conclusions on most of the critical ones. And an excerpt of the results, again, basing this profile comparison on the one they developed using Mamta's DNA profile regarding the carpet sample. The DNA analysis did not rule out Mamta as a contributor, nor did it rule out Baby. Specifically, quote, no conclusions can be made regarding Naresh Bhatt as a possible contributor to this DNA mixture profile. So wasn't a strong enough sample despite having DNA from either or both Mamta and Baby, or enough to identify any of his DNA. The carpet had been cleaned, though, remember, with all those frantic shopping trips to Home Depot.
Oh, we remember.
The samples were probably diluted and unlikely to return a clear result. But what I read this to be is they could not rule out Mamta or Baby. The idea that Baby's blood DNA is very, very unlikely to me. So there was no conclusion about him. It is possible, though, if you are familiar with any type of, I really don't want to, there's no other way to say this, but I'm just going to say it, knifing. You are more likely to cut yourself if you're attacking someone than not.
Yeah.
You're going to slip. There's blood mixture. So that could be a reason they can't rule him out, but they definitely couldn't rule her out. So I know what everyone is really waiting to hear about, though, and that is the saw.
Yeah.
Because that was another notable piece of the evidence. And I do have an image for everybody. Hold, please. Let the magic begin. Let's talk about this reciprocating saw. Here's what we know at this point from the swabs of the saw. So if you don't know what a reciprocating saw is, it's this thing right here.
I don't even know how to. It reciprocates back and forth.
It does. It reciprocates back and forth. You're going to cut drywall, some types of metal. Like, it's a pretty heavy duty thing. There were no stains on the saw blade holder. So if you see in the image here, a holder, you can attach and detach it. So it's not necessarily a stock part of the reciprocating saw, at least not this brand. So you can attach it. It keeps extra blades so they're easily accessible when your blade gets dull. So there's no stains there. Blood was present on the ridge of the interior handle. It was a mixture profile suitable for comparison and was developed, eliminating Naresh and Baby. There was no conclusion as to Mamta as a contributor will be made at this time. So no conclusion will be made about Mamta being a contributor on the ridge of the interior handle. So I find that interesting. So if you see here, the handle is a bit ergonomic, at least in this particular brand of reciprocating saw. Essentially what they're saying is there's a mixture profile. Baby and Naresh have been eliminated, but they are not going to make a conclusion about Mamta as the primary contributor yet. Wonder what that means. I know, there's more.
Yeah,
Blood was present on the lower vent. Naresh and Baby are eliminated. Mamta could not be eliminated. So again, you see here the heat dissipation vent, I guess you're just calling it the lower vent. The bottom part of that, there was blood present. Everyone but Mamta was eliminated.
Yeah.
On what was labeled side B of the saw, so I'm just going to guess opposite, flip it around. Blood again present, and again, Naresh and Baby are eliminated. Mamta is not. Blood was present on the other side, again, on the interior ridge of the handle. Naresh and Baby eliminated. Mamta is not. The same results were true of the opposing side of the saw, which was swabbed. It was sobbed thoroughly. And this was the conclusion. Mamta cannot be eliminated as a contributor of the DNA profile developed from the swab on side B of the reciprocating saw bottom vent and interior ridge. The saw handle matched a DNA mixture profile from her hairbrush. And basically, they eliminated 2 of the 3 family members from contributing DNA, but could not rule her out. So ultimately, I'll quote again, compared to the DNA profile generated by the brush, the likelihood of the DNA on the power saw belonging to anyone other than Mamta Bhatt is 1 in greater than 8 billion. The odds of that blood being anyone else's are 1 in 8 billion. Pretty powerful. It's absolutely clear. Your blood does not belong on a reciprocating saw. Ever. Period. That's all you need to know. So,
yeah.
The DNA is super important though. And this might help you formulate whatever your opinion might be on his guilt if you were a juror today. Without this DNA, the case becomes a crapshoot because the most diehard, take it to the bank, bona fide evidence you want to have in a no body case that creates a nexus between the victim, the location, and the accused.
Yep.
It becomes harder to muddy from a defense standpoint if we're talking about a loss of life amount of DNA. Essentially, this places him in their home, her in their home, her having an event incompatible with life based on the amount and the context of where this DNA was found. It narrows the gap on missing versus murdered. So, originally, his defense lawyer seemed pretty married to the idea that she was just missing. And that's what I held till right now, at least my opinion. We'll cover some content on what happened in the pretrial hearings before the murder charges, because we got a glimpse of what they were going to try to do before he was charged with murder. And what they were doing primarily was taking the angle of, you have no evidence that she's dead. You have no evidence she's not just off somewhere. All you know is that she's not here. Well, that's why this DNA evidence just seals that door shut for them, because this evidence says, oh yeah, someone had a loss of life event here because this is a significant amount of blood, and the only person we can't rule out is her. So that narrows in on them very tightly. That's why I have no clue what they're going to do about it. But their case for she's really missing, well, without this DNA, they might have a shot in hell to make that a case. They really could. Now, not so much, because this is pretty good evidence. And this is what the Commonwealth really needed in the absence of having a body. They needed evidence like DNA that you can't really argue with, because science is going to science.
Science is going to science, and you can't convict someone of a crime because they act a way that you wouldn't.
Exactly. And
So
we can rule out a lot of sort of these ridiculous notions that maybe it was someone else. The reason on STS that I said, we're not going to talk about the ride share on the last day she was at work. I said she was waiting outside the hospital. She got picked up by a ride share to go home, or she canceled her ride share. It's not relevant. And I saw one of the comments. I wanted to say something that why wouldn't they investigate? They did. But it's irrelevant because this is 2 days before she's officially no call, no show, no contact with the outside world. This person who picked her up and took her home is likely to have nothing to do with this.
Yeah,
that was just them throwing things at the wall to say, ooh, what if there's someone that harmed her? Well, they would have harmed her on the 27th when they had her in their car. She didn't go anywhere after that. She didn't leave her house. That's what the evidence shows. Her cell phone never left the house again until it starts moving around with Naresh. So that's why I said it wasn't relevant. That was another approach they could have taken. Well, what if someone wanted to hurt her? How? Who? She had almost no circle outside of her colleagues. She didn't go anywhere without her husband, who was possessive and controlling and kept her on a short leash. She couldn't drive. She didn't have any money. And the evidence shows she didn't leave her house again. So there's no third party that's going to abduct her from a shopping mall or something unless they went to her home in the age of Ring cameras, and not a single neighbor and not a single human being was able to say, wow, we got this on there is no one with motive and nothing to gain.
Yeah, it doesn't.
He's the only one that really has the most to gain from this. And I think we can see what the writing on the wall is. But again, I'm still open to hearing whatever the defense is. I want to understand, and I am open to changing my mind if someone can.
Or
he
takes the avenue of it was an accident.
That's what he's going to have to do. I mean,
I think he's up against a wall, right? Because when you have DNA, you've been spotted, you've got all these different behaviors.
Yeah.
You've talked way too much. And when you show that and deliver that to a jury, they're going to be like,
yeah,
these puzzle pieces kind of fit that you did this, right?
Right.
So I think I'm not a defense attorney. If it were me in this case, I would say you are going to need to be okay with spending some time in prison, because the only way that you don't potentially spend the rest of your life in prison, if you say it was an accident, or please have mercy, like I've made a huge, that's the only way I can see him maybe having a chance. Not that he's going to walk, but
and like Josh said, I think we already thought this, but it was really nice to have that affirmation from Josh when we talked to him. The only other way this works is if he says, okay, I'm guilty, which he won't. Or, okay, it was an accident. I can tell you what I did with her. He can cut a deal. And as long as that deal is going to yield some outcome, like they find her, then, it's a good deal. But we're talking maybe some years off his sentence, because it's going to be a life sentence. So I don't know if it's going to, if the juice is going to be worth the squeeze on that one. But something to remember too is they still don't have the murder weapon. Nobody confuse the saw for the murder weapon, because this is not the murder weapon. This is going to be used in the defiling a dead body charge, not the murder charge.
I think the murder weapon was these.
Absolutely. Combined with a little. Yeah. I think that's absolutely the most likely thing that happened. He wasn't walking around his house with knives in his hand. I would find that very strange, even for him. And like we talked about on STS, I don't think I got into detail here, but very quickly, the most common cause of intimate partner homicides for women is not an instance of DV that just ends someone's life. It's actually, and when I say the most common of all those cases, it's more than like 60% based on the statistics I looked up. Speaking is so hard today. I also get super worked up talking about this, but
I know.
The majority of homicides in DV dynamic relationships don't result from an incident of DV. They result from an other argument. That's how they're classified. So we're talking about a snap moment. You're having escalate. And now think about what we've covered already. There's escalation and then snap. I 100% agree with you. He snapped. I think he strangled her. And then was like, ooh, Yeah, it goes all banana pants after that. Not that that's not crazy to begin with, but you're right. I think that's how it happened. And that's why the saw is not, you're not running around your house with a reciprocating saw. I'm sorry. You're just not.
No.
That's not what happened. They're going to use that to show the defiling a dead body charge. But remember, he can be off on murder and not on that charge. And that charge is like a year in jail. It's
it wasn't much.
It's not
it
a big
wasn't
penalty.
much.
So we got a lot of options here as for what can happen. You know, we're not going to get into that rabbit hole tonight, but we're gonna. So I hope you have some questions on that. But before I give you the nicer updates, what do you think, Lindsay? Because there's a few closing loop, more positive things to share before we tie it up.
Yeah, we kind of talked about, when Josh was saying, like, there's sometimes the option of making a deal if he comes forward and says, this is what happened and here's where she is.
Yeah.
I don't think he would know where she is.
No.
I don't think, I'm trying to be
best we can hope for is that he owns up to at least the defiling the body part.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. At least, like, say, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And things. And I don't think that's going to happen. If he wants to clear up his conscience, that would be the only reason for him to do that, which he doesn't strike me as that kind of person at this moment. But I don't know. I don't know him. So to be clear, Naresh and I are not friends.
I was trying to think about what the case was that was similar to this in the moment. And so the case I'm thinking about.
This really old guy?
Yes, Robert Durst. He got away with a number of bad things.
I remember him being in the news.
Netflix, they caught him up.
Oh.
If you have not watched The Jinx, I think it's Netflix, you need to go watch that because that is some intense. It's the updated season that they put out where they caught his confession on accident. I was gripping my chair, but this is Robert Durst. He could be convicted, Naresh, of only defiling the dead body because that's what they have evidence of, just like Robert Durst. He got off on a murder charge because all they could prove that in one of the instances he was being charged, he definitely admitted to defiling the body, but he still said he didn't kill him. It was mind-blowing, and that was the first thing I just thought of a second ago when I was talking about it.
I remember him now because I remember reading about how everyone was just in this uproar of like, how did he get away with this?
Yeah. Netflix caught him.
Way to go, Netflix.
Good job, Netflix.
No, I was just, Naresh doesn't come across as someone who's going to take ownership. I don't know him. No. I don't claim to know him.
No.
But given what has happened, and honestly, like, I'm trying to articulate this properly because it's hard when you do true crime stuff and you're in this podcast world and you want to be respectful of the person who has been the victim of a crime, but also you have to face a little bit of a sense of reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And the internet's not going to like you all the time. You can't be everyone's favorite human. You're not all going to love us. We know.
Oh, come on.
I mean, we can, we're just so lovable.
No.
But we know. We're not margaritas. We know we can't make everybody happy and we're okay with it.
We're fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about you, internet. I'm worried about Mamta and her dignity and her family. Yeah. And our purpose of this podcast is to make sure her story is heard and that the internet knows what happened to her and that we are seeking justice, right? My final thought on this, I think we're going to go to trial and I think it's going to be trying to place some sort of reasonable doubt somewhere in the story.
I mean, they're going to have to.
There's no other story.
Nope. None that makes sense. There's no alternative person or story that makes sense. No, there just isn't. And I've been in touch. I mean, you know this, but the internet doesn't know this. I've been in touch for some time now. Since when this was all happening in real time, I was already in touch with people that were leading searches, certain friends that may not be everyone's favorite friend. I know, but I'm not going to say it. And I do have a line of communication to Holly, who is the representative for the family. I've chosen not to use it because she's been busy. Because like I said, I do know people who intimately knew Mamta without realizing it. And then rather than invite more chaos, even though it would be getting more out there, it just feels like there's a right place and a right time to say, hey, offline, would you like a cup of coffee? Like, can we have a conversation? How are you doing? How can we help? How can we put a call to action out for other people to help? It hasn't felt like the right place, right time yet. It was all very crazy. And now that things are sort of on an even keel while we're in this quiet before this trial storm, maybe we will be able to have someone come on and talk to us about Mamta that really intimately knows her. Maybe we won't, but the option is there. I just want to be respectful, if that makes sense.
I know telling Joel about this story, he was like, what?
Right. And God bless Holly. She's become the family spokesperson for Mamta's family, especially given the language barrier. And that is an excellent segue to the really positive way we can close this up.
Mm-hmm.
So, right now, investigators are still working on digital forensics and all this other stuff. But over the holidays, the Manassas Park Police Department got a special surprise from Mamta's mom and her brother and her family in Nepal. They sent these really sweet, beautiful Nepali tokens. I believe they were hats, but they were tokens of appreciation from Mamta's family for their dedication to the case and for their hard work. So I know people initially, I was one of them, were like, what's Manassas Park Police Department doing? But it looks like at the very least, they're making Mamta's family happy, which makes me happy. They also got to see baby and say hello and visit with her, which is really, really nice. Again, she's living with Mamta's family. And I think it's really sweet that they wanted to give them these gifts and honor them with a token of gratitude for their hard work. At least something is going well here and they feel like they're getting support. And Holly is their spokesperson. So that was a nice news article to see. It's a reminder that they're working for, just a piece of justice at this point. And I like that they got to see baby. I'm glad that they got to see her and spend some time with her, because that's also a reminder of what they're working towards. They want to see justice for this baby, because even though she is going to lose her father in some way, shape, or form in this process, it's still sad. That's still a parent. It's a very conflicting set of emotions I have about this, because I didn't always have two parents. Hell, as an adult, I don't have two parents. It kind of fluctuated. So while that's also very scarring sometimes, I think the alternative of not knowing how this baby would have been raised by Naresh, or had she been shipped off back to Nepal if he had the chance, that actually terrifies the hell out of me.
Yeah. I mean, what things you think are supposed to look like aren't always what they should be, right? And so it was a very, very sweet gesture that they did that. And I can totally understand that they were probably very fearful, because Mamta didn't have family here when all of that was happening. They were probably concerned that she didn't have like some sort of advocate here. I mean, and I could totally understand that, but she meant a lot to the people she worked with. She had friends.
She touched the people she knew.
Yeah.
And had she had more time, she would have touched a lot more people. And she had an incredible circle of allies that knew on day one. Mamta had not been missing for but a day and a half before someone sounded the alarm. And that's because A, she had the bravery to say, this is what's going on, even if she was resisting some help at first. And B, they knew and did everything they could in that moment. Well, if she's not going to take our help, or if we don't know what to do to help, we can do something now. If they had not, God only knows how much of a head start he would have had. So all of you, any of you, I don't know who made the call. I don't know who is in this close nest of allies, but thank you for saying something when people often wait a lot longer to say something, and for knowing in your gut that your instinct should be, she would not, no call, no, we need to do something about this. So thank you. I hope that anybody, Lindsay would be the one that's like, I haven't heard from her in 19 hours. We're calling 911. Like,
I haven't heard from her in 30 minutes. Where are you? And what's happening?
It's been 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Is everything okay? Say something.
I hope everybody has at least one person that would be that concerned for their well-being, knowing something's not right. So to whoever it was that called, and to everyone that participated in putting her name out there, got my attention. And in real time, I'm driving by the house when the news crews are there. Like day one, I was like, what's going on? Yeah, no, I've been living it in real time and now waiting like everybody else. So we'll bring you more updates. Kid. We got more to do. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think the next hearing is in March. Like the next, it's March 25th or something like that, if I remember correctly.
I swear to you, I'd be really mad if my bingo card needs to include postponed for translator. They've had months to schedule a translator.
Yeah. But we will keep you guys posted. Our next episode, we are going to kind of get into the Adelson drama.
Just a teeny tiny bit. We know everyone loves it. We followed the whole thing. We just never make content about it because we don't want to oversaturate you. But also, like this case, we'd have to start with hours of content because it's so much.
Yeah. No. So what we're going to do is kind of give the story. We're going to set the table because Adelson's last few hearings are coming up before her trial. So we're kind of going to set the table for if you've been living under a rock.
Too long didn't read. Somehow.
Exactly. So that's going to be next on the docket. If you like what you see, you like what you hear, like, subscribe, share if you feel the need to do so.
YouTubey things.
All the YouTubey things. Internet be internet and click, 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 click.
And if you don't, that's okay too. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you for watching. We're glad that you're here. We're glad that you're willing to listen to Mamta's story. So that's what is important.
Yes.
But until next time, Kimberly, can you show our friends
choices? Out? You know it's coming if you've watched our videos. But really, I mean it though. Like, make good choices because we don't want to talk about you later on the internet. We don't want to have to put your face on a wine bottle because that's where I'd put my face instead of a milk carton. So make good choices, and we will see you next time. Start over. We're so stupid. We're so extra.